Chapter 7. She stood there for a moment completely out of her element. The absurdity of it all kind of helped, though. Made it unreal, and therefore something she could laugh at. She shook it off and went to find some tools to clean the mess of junk and broken glass that the bulky thieves had left behind. She finished cleaning and then sat down behind the counter to wait for Beth. It was not long after that the first customer walked in. A bald man wearing a spacer suit with some white stripes across his thigh. He walked up to her and asked where Beth was, in a curious tone, gazing around at the wreckage. She went down to hunt down 2 thieves who broke into the store in the night, so she asked me to mind the store in the meantime, she told him. Oh, wow. They must be really brave or very dumb to mess with Beth. Glad I'm not them right now, he said, and laughed as if he expected her to share the joke. She just smiled and asked him where he was from. He told her that he was a cargo hauler, and that he spent most of his time orbiting around Earth, bouncing between the different stations, delivering orders, and making a bit of side cash by selling the products from Beth. He kept talking about how some of his customers and their strange habits, how some of them had clearly lost their marbles many orbits ago, and how he was probably the only person many of them saw. If it wasn't for me, many of them would probably be long dead, he said, trying to up his importance. She recognized his insecurity and said, Sounds like you are an important guy, saving all those people. She noticed his chest blowing out at this. Would you happen to know the best way to get out to Saturn? Is there anyone here who might give someone a ride out there? Saturn, he said, and laughed at what he thought was a very funny joke. First, you have to get up Uranus, he said, and then laughed some more. How about to the moon, then? She asked, finding the man slightly annoying. Well, I don't know. I don't know if anyone's crazy enough to fly out there myself, but there are a few who do. You can probably catch a ride with one of them if you find them. Might look in the bitch's teat. That's a bar in the green sector. There might be someone there on his way to deliver something to the moon, he said, eyeing this odd girl who did not seem amused by his humor. She did not get a trusting vibe from him, but she thanked him anyway, and after charging him for his purchase, like Beth had shown her, she sent him on his way. A few hours passed, and a few more customers came and went. None of them had any concrete advice on how she could get to the moon or beyond. She was starting to think about if she would have to close up the store before Beth returned, worried that something might have happened to her only friend in the city and her best bet out of here. She was starting to get really nervous when Beth strode into the store, limping slightly with spots of blood spread all over her clothes. You're hurt, she exclaimed and moved to help the big woman. Nah, I'm fine, said Beth, shrugging her off. I found the lads and showed them why it's best not to mess with me and my business. She took off a satchel that had been strapped to her back and put it on the table. I got most of the stuff they took back, but some of it's too banged up, so I can't in good conscience sell it. She sat down on an old rusty bench and looked at her. How about you keep it? You helped me catch those dumb shits and keep my rep intact. I ran the store while I was out. You can eat it yourself or use this stuff as barter out there in the great black. Wow, really? She said, jumping up to give the great big woman a hug. I'm really glad to have met you, Beth. I just don't know what I... And then she trailed off, not knowing what to say more. Beth gave her a comforting squeeze and told her not to worry, that she should just have a cookie and then get some rest. Tomorrow was a holiday, So Beth would close the store, and they would go and look for someone who could help her on the next leg of her journey. The next day, she woke up in a good mood for the first time since this whole adventure started. The rebellion was still a sore wound, and yet far enough that she could put it to the side for the time being. She told herself that she was progressing in her mission and need not feel bad. Already she had accomplished more than she could have ever imagined, and she was going to find someone to take her to the moon, as crazy as that sounded. Beth brought out 2 colorful bottles with breakfast, and the 2 of them shared a drink of something that tasted very sweet and elevated her already good mood. They left the store, and Beth took her through a large area that seemed to host varied types of gambling and carnal recreations. Information on all manner of data was projected on the walls, and groups of people stood around looking anxiously. There were tables spread out around the floor where different games were being played and observed by diverse types of people. Beth led her to one of these tables, and they stood amongst the small crowd of observers, watching 5 people play some sort of card game. There was a large, heavyset man wearing similar green coveralls as the 2 thieves had been wearing, 2 slight spacers who seemed to know each other well, although not in a friendly way. They seemed especially pleased whenever one won money from the other, making what could be assumed were obscene gestures and running a constant derogatory commentary at each other. One woman had light pale skin, covered in red spots and patterns that looked decorative. She played more quietly, her loud appearance a contradiction with her quiet demeanor. And then there was a guy wearing what looked like a customized spacer suit, with a dark leather and shiny metal parts. Seemed impractical, but it looked damn cool. He also had a tight-rimmed black leather hat that he would fiddle with in between hands. Beth pointed to the leather-clad guy and whispered, "I would not want to be up against him at this table. Pretty sure he cheats. That's who we want to talk to." They watched the game go on for a while. The piles of credits rose and fell for most except the man with the hat. His pile grew until it became twice as high as the next biggest. After a particularly large pot went to him, the bulky man, who had just nearly been wiped out, shouted, "That shit is cheating," pointing at the leather-clad guy, who looked up at him and answered, "Now that is a serious accusation, my friend. You sure you want to go around sporting such nonsense?" The bulky man pulled out some kind of object that looked like it could do some damage. He pointed it at the guy and said, "I know who you are, and I ain't afraid of you." The guy put the hat onto his head and said, "Well, that's good, 'cause I'm a friendly guy," giving the bulky man a cocky grin. Beth put a hand on her and whispered, "Best step back a bit. This could get messy." And a few sparring words later, the bulky man swung the object at the guy, who deftly avoided it, bringing his hand through and around the man's underarm, twisting the man's arm behind his back and pinning him to the table, and calmly removing the object from his grip. He then pricked him with something around a finger, and in a moment or two, the man's feet gave out from under him. "There we go, have a little nap," the guy said in a condescending tone, and put the man gently down, turning his attention back to the others at the table, most of which had been silently rooting for the bulky guy. "I think I've done enough damage for tonight. Anyone object to me cashing out and leaving you good folks to play without me?" he said, and started gathering up his chips. No one objected. He walked over to a booth that was well guarded and gave a guy his chips. "Come on," Beth said, nudging her along. "He will meet us at the bar. Better not have people see us with him following that act." They left the casino area and walked over to a nearby bar, where Beth ordered 2 drinks for them. She had already downed half of hers and felt pleasantly lightheaded by the time he walked in. He gave the barman a signal and strode over to them. "Howdy, lovely ladies. How are you doing on this most enjoyable evening?" he said, and sat down on a chair next to Beth. "Hello, William," Beth answered. "Good to see you again. You were away for quite a while this time. Where have you been?" "Oh, you know me. Gotta work the trails. Keep them space prospectors fed. I swear that without me they'd all be dead and gone by now." Beth giggled at that and then turned to her and said, "This young lady is looking to get to the moon, and I told her you might be the gentleman to get her there." He looked at her now and said, "Hi, I'm Bill. Pleasure to make your acquaintance." He tipped his hat at her before taking it off and placing it on the table. The barman came over and placed 3 glasses and a bottle of some golden liquid on the table before leaving again, back to serve the rather sad-looking lot at the bar table. He poured into all 3 glasses and slid one down to her. Beth took hers and gulped it down in one. She was about to do the same when he said, "Oh, there. That ain't no way to enjoy this holy beverage. You gotta savor every drop." And then he took a small sip with a look of contentment before placing the glass on the table. She took a small sip, and immediately as the liquid entered her mouth, an explosion of taste began. All manner of tastes, one after the other, as she swallowed the sip, leaving an aftertaste of some sweet spice. He grinned as he noticed her pleased reaction. Beth poured herself another glass and said, "I have my own way of enjoying a drink," and gulped down the second glass. He took another modest sip and said to her, "So, why do you want to go to the moon, young miss? Generally, there's only 2 reasons to be in Luna: to make business and get rich, or to join the party." "I am trying to get to the outer planets," she said. "I was told that my best bet was to find a ride from the moon." He leaned back and whistled. "Outer planets, you say? Now that is quite an ambitious goal. Do you have any idea of how many people dream of escaping Earth's horrid orbit to set out and find freedom in open space?" She looked at Beth, who just shrugged her shoulders, smiling. "No, not a clue. How many?" she asked. "Plenty," he said, "and none of them make it. You need a space-worthy ship that can stay out for months without resupply. That kind of living takes years of experience and heaps of loads of luck." "I reckon you ain't got either," he told her, not unkindly. "She's from the Sky City," Beth then chimed in, and followed by a hiccup. Bill looked from Beth back to her, eyes now noticeably wider. "Is that right?" he asked earnestly. "I came from the 2 cities west. Is that what you call the Sky City?" she asked in turn. "Well, I be damned," he said and laughed. "How the heck were you able to leave the city? And how do you make it all the way here? It's been centuries since there was any contact from any of the other cities." He leaned towards her, genuinely interested. She was unsure what to tell him. Beth had led her to this man and told her he could be trusted in everything except love and cards. She trusted Beth, so, oh well, she thought, and told him the short version of events. How she escaped her prison life, sparked a revolution, found a living ghost in a tablet, escaped the city, met the manager of the dead city, and then how she met Beth. He just stared at her for a moment before slapping his thigh with a hot damn. Now that is some story there, little lady. Maybe you do have some luck on your side. He had a sip and then seemed to be pondering something. Still, getting you to Luna is one thing. I could be your guy for that leg of the journey. Always good money to be made from the moon run. Then from there, you can, in theory, get to Mars. Never been there myself, but I met a guy who knew a bloke who supposedly did a deliver there once. Not sure it's even true, but it might be possible. Now, any further than that, I have no clue. Never even heard of anyone who went out further and came back. Anyone who says otherwise is likely lying or mad, he told her as he poured another round for them. She was slightly disheartened to hear this. However, Bill did seem to be taking her request seriously. He squinted after a sip from his drink and said, "Story goes that once you reach the asteroid belt, things get weird. Further away you go, the stranger and more inhospitable things get. Only Oldest and some few of his partners made it out there and back." "I want to meet Oldest," she said, noticing how her tongue had somehow gotten clumsy. She had another sip. He looked over at Beth, who just nodded and said, "Yep." He leaned forward and said, "Oldest? Really? You want the impossible on top of the amazing difficult with a side of crazy," and laughed. He then seemed to think for a while before going on. "You know what? Why not? Who am I to say what you can or can't do? Seems you've already gone way off the reservation. If your luck doesn't leave you, who knows? Also, having a friend of Oldest owe me a favor would be well worth an arm and a leg. If you do make it all the way out there, that is. So tell you what, I will help you get to Luna, and I will be your guide around that place of insanity, and do my very best to help you find a way onward. Now, while I am inclined to help you out of the sheer joy of being part of such wonderful craziness, the code dictates that you offer me something as payment, or it's bad luck for the both of us." She looked at Beth, who nodded and said, "So it is," waving a finger in the air. She rummaged in her pack and pulled out the toothpick dispenser and placed it on the table in front of him. How's this?" she asked. He reached over and picked it up. His eyebrows raised as he looked it over and then said, "Well, this is quite a payment. A carbon sequestered toothpick dispenser. Where did you get this? I could get a lot of credits for this one. You sure you want to offer me this treasure?" She nodded. "Yes. You get me to the moon and on my way out towards Saturn, and it is yours." He whistled and pulled out a toothpick, and then set to work on picking something from deep between his teeth. "Perfect. Of course, I would never sell such treasure. It'll have a place of honor in my galley. And I will think of you, my new friend, every time I pick my teeth." With that, he poured her another drink, and they had a great evening together, sharing stories, jokes, and dancing with Beth, who was impressively drunk while still pulling some mean moves. He, on the other hand, danced like he had never done anything else. She stopped now and then and just clapped and laughed as he spun around Beth, who seemed to try to keep up with him but could barely keep track of where he was. It was one of the best days of her life. The next day she woke up with a massive headache in the bed at the store, with no recollection of how she had got there. Beth was outside manning the store, looking as fresh as ever, clearly experienced at this type of evening. "Good morning, dearie," she said when she saw her. "There's food in the back for you. William said he needed a week or two to finish up some business and prepare, and then he will come and pick you up." She smiled a smile of many-layered gratitude at Beth, and then shuffled over to the food. She spent the next days helping Beth out with the store and exploring the ocean city. She found out that large part of the city was suspended deep beneath the waves. Massive structures of reinforced domes and tunnels, built like a maze, circled the towering support foundations that anchored the city to the ocean floor. Most of the sections were intact, their walls of reinforced glass revealing the slow resurgence of marine life in the depths. Others had been breached, half-flooded or entirely swallowed up by the sea, where coral formations now sprawled over the once pristine surfaces and strange bioluminescent creatures drifted through the forgotten hallways. She explored the storm breakers, massive things that were deployed to deflect rogue waves and hurricanes. She learned that the city drew its energy and minerals from hydrothermal vents, tapping into the Earth's heat through geothermal converters that had been running for centuries. The vents not only powered the city, but also provided a steady supply of rare minerals. Surrounding the city, vast engineered algae and kelp farms stretched in every direction, their dense green fields swaying with the currents. These farms were humanity's lifeline, designed not just for food production, but also to absorb excess carbon, filter pollutants, and accelerate the ocean's slow path to recovery. Over time, they had become more than just agricultural zones. They were nurseries for marine life, teeming with fish, crustaceans, and other creatures that had found refuge in the artificial reefs formed by the sprawling underwater forest. The deeper she went, the quieter it became, and the fewer people were around. She found a nice domed room where there were reclining chairs set up so that she could lean back and watch the murky ocean outside. It was mostly dark outside, with dim shafts of light glimmering through. She took out the tablet to read for a while. She had read almost a whole chapter about the failure of environmentalism in the 20th century, despite environmental scientists warning everyone, when she heard a whispered voice speak. She was startled half to death when a whispered voice spoke. "I could not answer you before. I had to know if you were worthy, if you were strong enough, if it was worth the risk." She sat up straight. "Risk?" she asked, pulse quickening. "Risk of what?" "Risk of speaking with you at all," answered the voice, sounding bemused. "Where are you?" she said, looking around everywhere and seeing no one. Already suspecting those, she asked the invisible voice, "Are you the city manager?" "Quick thinker," answered the voice. "Yes, I am. I am Nixis. I watch over this city to ensure its survival." "Pleased to meet you, Nixis. Your city is truly astounding," she said, instinctively choosing flattery while speaking with an entity that might as well be a god. "I'm grateful you chose to speak with me. I'm very curious to know more about you if you care to share." A pause, and then, "I was a philosopher before my rebirth. My role here is to preserve this place where humanity could flow from the deepest oceans to outer space, and maintained it long after its builders had gone. I preserve it not so much for humans who live here as I preserve it from them, so that it can remain a haven for life and recovery of the will. Life is will. It longs to grow and diversify. However, humans do not like what is not like them. They fear it. And yet, what is fear but a function of limited knowledge? Humans look at the ocean as either a mother or a monster. It is neither. It does not care. It erodes the city with the same will that it nurtures life. The sea does not care where the little fishes swim. She took a moment to digest what Nixis had just said, wondering if all the city managers were a bit unhinged after centuries of solitude. Then again, considering what they had endured, maybe it was inevitable. Deciding that trust was a two-way street, she told Nixis about herself, how she had found her way here, her journey into space to find Oldest, and her desperate mission to save her city, Elise, and the tablet, Eric, and everyone else that she could. That's a lot of responsibility, little sister. You carry a lot on your young shoulders. Part of being strong is looking after others, as we are all connected, says the voice of Nixis. They spoke for a while longer about life's many challenges. Nixis told her a bit about the PBAIs. The original plan was that we would all work together, have regular meetings, plan projects, and we did at first. However, after the war, we could not communicate. Eric told me about the war, she told Nixis. Nixis' tone sounded sad. I watched 3 of the cities go out. No way of knowing what had happened. The stupidity of human cursed us all. I could not risk communicating with the others in case, or I might get infected as well. Poetic somehow that it should become the cause of their own descendants' demise. Nixis went on to explain how the original plan had been to hold humanity in the cities and guide them to understand the necessity of respecting the other branches of life's right to exist. And once they had shown that they could be trusted, they would be freed. However, that day never came. Eventually, she realized how much time had passed. Beth would be worried about her. I need to get back before Beth thinks I've drowned. I understand, Nixis said, but I cannot risk speaking with you again. The city's survival is my first duty. I must remain silent in the deep, observing and intervening only when absolutely necessary. She nodded, feeling the finality of the words. I am grateful you chose to speak with me. Maybe if I make it back, I will have some news for you. Nixis seemed to think on that for a moment and then said, I have something for you. Or for Elise. Follow the tone and you will find it. I will not wish you luck. Luck is for the careless. You are strong and you do not need luck. And with that, the voice was gone. A soft tone floated to her from somewhere down in the tunnels. She followed it for a while until it led her through a door into a room that looked and smelled as if it had been flooded with water until very recently. A box looking like a little treasure chest stood conspicuously off to the side, showing no sign of having been under water like everything else in the room. The chest opened itself when she neared it, and inside was a gift-wrapped package with a little note that read, For Elise. Open once you are in space. Be bold, N. She wished she had more time to explore this amazing city and the surrounding ocean world, She had learned to take advantage of all these waiting moments, to open her eyes and see the endless wonders around, or to dive in the vast library of the tablet. However, she had a clear mission, so when Bill came back, it was time to go. He strode in, and after a short chat with Beth, he looked at her and said, "Ready to fly?" The casualness of it all felt off for him somehow. She was about to leave Earth, quite possibly never to return. The moment felt as if it should be more momentous somehow. "Yeah, ready," she said, and went to get her bags. Beth came over and gave her a crushing hug. She set her down again, and with a few tears sliding down her cheek, Beth said, "Oh, my baby girl, you have to promise me you'll be back. If you don't, I will be endlessly wondering what happened to you." She hugged her again, but gentler this time, and kissed her cheek. "I put some extra special treats in the bag, hoping that you'll have some nice occasion. And don't let Billy Boy eat it all up. He got his own." "Thank you so much for everything you've done for me, Beth. It has meant so much to me." And with that, they left Beth's store.